Okay, welcome everyone who's listening. I don't think we're having a big crowd yet, but who knows? That might change in a couple of minutes. Um, Tonight's guest is Robert Reed. I'm saying that correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I've met Robert during our conversation with Stephanie Thomason, and liked what he did there, so invited him to have a chat with us. With me is um, the other host uh, of tonight, and now someone's getting mad. Charis. Um, so welcome, Robert. Can you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Robert Reed. I'm living in Texas, and I met you from last week's little discussion slash debate. I was born and raised in the Bible Belt and was raised to be core Christian. The Bible was a daily part of my being. God was never, quote unquote, too far from me. Nowadays, if you did it, you'd be sued to know tomorrow. But when I played high school football, my coach was a hardcore Christian. So we started every practice with a prayer. We ended it with a prayer. Long story short, I was just raised to be very, 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 very religious. And even though I always kind of had those lingering doubts and questions that could never fully be answered. And long story short, when I got to my late 30s, I got tired of losing arguments, and the stuff just never really made sense to me. So I just dumped it because I couldn't take it anymore.
Hmm. And so uh, let's have a picture. What happened? So you stopped going to church?
Yeah, I stopped going to church when I was in college. Uh, a little background on me: my brother is not only gay, he is fabulously gay and a cross-dresser, drag queen. And I went to a very hardcore Baptist church while I was in college. And it was the fire, it was the brimstone, it was the no premarital sex, it was gay is bad. And I would say things, and it was one of those, if I said it at 12 noon, at 11:59 in my head, I was like, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. And I would confront gay people and tell them how horribly broken they were. And, it's one of those, you can be gay, but you just can't be gay. And all the time, I'm like, I'm slapping my brother across the face this entire time. And you just, not only you being ugly, but you're being a hypocrite. And so it just, one more log on the fire that I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, I can relate with my own background as far as that goes. In my church, even if your own family is gay, you don't tolerate that either. And like you said, yeah, they might be gay in essence, but if they're practicing, as they put it, practicing gay versus non-practicing gay, then you have to call that out. You can't accept that. And if they want to continue living in sin, then you might have to live in alienation from them.
Yeah, that was something that I just couldn't do. And I tell people all the time, if you want a reason not to like my brother, just be in the room with him for 5 minutes. That guy will give you 100 reasons why you wouldn't want to call him an asshole, but not one of them is because he likes guys sexually. And it was just a narrative that I just could not wrap my mind around because, and not even my brother, I had frat brothers that were gay. I knew gay people, and they were just genuinely nice people who just so happened to be attracted to the same sex. And I'm going to church on Sunday hearing about how horrible these people are, and I just couldn't swear that away. Experience. I'm watching a gay guy pretty much give his shirt off his back to someone who needs it more than he does on Monday, but on Sunday I just heard he's going to be tortured forever after he dies. And I'm like, that makes zero sense to me. So again, it was just one more log on a very big bonfire that I couldn't square away. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. And so you walked away. So how did that go down in your family?
Horribly. Horribly. So the running joke kind of between me
Thanksgivings
and
were
my...
fun, right?
What's that?
Said Thanksgivings were fun though, right?
Oh, they're a blast now. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So kind of the running joke between me and my brother is that, they've kind of failed twice because my brother's gay and I'm an atheist. So it's like, man, you guys just really screwed up. My parents took it as well as you could possibly take it. It was a shock that, they raised me to believe and go to church, and I need Jesus Christ as my savior because I'm just horribly broken. And I finally just told them, well, they found out because I have this enormous atheist tattoo on my arm. So it's kind of hard to miss. And so I just remember we were sitting in my
subtle
living room.
one.
Yeah, and it was, yeah. And my mom asked, what is that tattoo? And I told her, it's the symbol for atheism. And like lots of people, when they ask me and I tell them, there's this long, awkward silence because they don't know really what atheism is. So I had to tell her, look, you tell me there's a God, I say I just don't believe you. And I think under any other circumstances, she probably would have started crying. And my dad just remained silent the whole time. And after some back and forth, she just simply said, well, I'm going to continue to pray for you. And that, I know my mom very well, and we're still very close. But that was her way of saying, I'm very, very sad for your outcome. And now it's just a matter of, we don't talk about it. My family in Louisiana, it's the same thing. Just like my brother's homosexuality, we just don't talk about it because we're not going to see eye to eye. No one's getting any younger, so let's not waste any time fighting. So we just don't talk about it, really.
Okay, but has the attitude towards you changed any?
Not really. I mean, I'll go home here in the next 2 weeks for Christmas, and my aunt will still hug me around my neck. My favorite cousin will still laugh and have a drink on Christmas Eve. If the subject ever came up, I'm pretty sure I can answer for him. I'm scared. I don't want you to burn in hell forever. Stuff like that. But outwardly, no, the attitude hasn't changed too much.
Which would be a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
Because
I'm 45. My aunts and uncles are in their 70s and 80s. My cousins are all in their 50s. We're going to spend the rest of our lives not agreeing. So let's just not. If this was Twitter, let's fight it out because I have nothing but time on my hands. My family's different, and I would much rather, eat some gumbo and have some good gin and laugh about, what that time we slid down the levee and, I fell on my ass. So let's laugh about that. I don't want to waste what time I have left with my family discussing whether there's an invisible sky wizard or not. My family's different.
Yeah. Well, I also noticed because for people who haven't seen it, I'll have a link below in the description. I'll add that in later to the episode of Coffee Talk where we both joined. What I did notice is something that Charis will confirm about me, that you're a little bit different in a live talk than you are on Twitter.
Yeah. How so?
Well, I've seen some of your tweets, and you can be a lot more harsh than you were. I'm just putting it out mildly.
Yeah,
because
I try not to be an ass unless I'm provoked or someone attacks me. I still like to learn. And so, like last week, I don't think I was too terribly mean or harsh to Stephanie or Heather, even though we didn't agree. If it ever gets to a point to where it's MF this, you can moron that, you idiot, it becomes a matter of who has the best insults or the biggest set of lungs versus who has the most valid point. So I try not to be a jerk there. My tweets can be a little bit harsher in that I guess when I only have 280 characters, I'm just trying to cut to the quick. And I don't have a lot of time for like last week, there were several times where Heather and especially Stephanie, you would ask them X and they started talking about applesauce. And you cut that shit off. And you're just like, it's just better if you just answer the question because we're wasting time.
Yeah.
I
Right.
have to mute myself, excuse me.
What's that?
I said I have to mute myself, excuse me.
Oh, go ahead. Well, and I guess I guess there is a difference between my tweet tone and my actual verbal tone. Because I guess my verbal tone, I want to hear what it is you have to say. So I don't want to insult you if I don't have to.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much exactly how I do it.
Bullshit.
It's not. Enlighten us, Charis. Go ahead.
I'll just direct all listeners to your Twitter.
Well, I don't
You've
insult.
improved.
I don't insult on Twitter, do I? Well,
No.
not usually. I mean, at the moment, I have some kind of.
I haven't had to run damage control for you in a while.
No, although you
Granted,
might have, you might have missed.
had,
You might have missed Mike. I currently have some kind of weird Christian fan who.
No, I let you go with Mike.
Who went completely berserk when I withdrew the offer to come on, and so yeah, I'm happy to insult him because
you said he came after me or was going to come after me or something.
Yeah, he basically called you an idiot and a liar, and well,
okay.
that doesn't go down well. People who know me know that we have a fairly good bond, that we are good friends. So if someone does that and you not being on Twitter, I maybe have to be a big brother a little bit, and at some point I might even overreact because it's.
So what was I lying about?
I pointed him to the chat that we did on Twitter before you on YouTube before you joined.
That one, yeah, that one.
And yeah.
So I'm a liar there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it went to a point where he said that you deserve to be raped and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
And he sent me, I think, 10 emails in the time span of 1 hour, going from completely nuts to just utterly nuts. I don't know. He one moment he was apologizing. The other moment he went, "I'm going to kill myself." Then he went to, "Now I'm an atheist," and then he went to, "Jesus is back," and I'm going to be civil now.
Holy shit! Was this Mike?
This was Mike, and at some point I had a follower who. Like Mike, lives in Texas, and I sent him the email address, and I said, well, I'm not sure what this guy's going to do. If he's going to hurt himself, maybe we should have law enforcement at least have the email address and see if they can find him, so they can prevent him from doing something we wouldn't want him to do. But at this point, I'm not taking him seriously at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I've called him my chew toy, and that's what he's going to be, because I'm going to play with him whenever I have the time, and when I don't have time, I just ignore him, because he's not worth talking to. If you can't be serious, if you're a believer and you want to talk to me, then that's great. But
right.
He doesn't even sound like a good chew toy.
Yeah, he's a great chew toy.
Sounds like he's been worn out by somebody else before.
I've got.
Yeah, but well,
what's that?
Well, as I said, that's pretty much the only one that I'd be happy to insult. I mean, he's shown me that he's not a reasonable human being. In all the tweets that he has sent so far, he has told me that he's sorry that he made the comments about Charis.
Jesus.
He has yet to say that he's genuinely apologizing to Charis, and that he realized what he said and why that was wrong. And I've tried to hint, so he might even look at his own tweets, but I don't think he's even capable of looking at his own tweets. So
someone like that, for me, I have no forgiveness for crap like that. We can, like I said, we can disagree, we can talk crap, we can do whatever we want to do, but at the core of it, if you can send a tweet, an email, a comment to a woman, anybody that you disagree with, that you hope they get raped, you are a horse's ass.
It sounds like he might have been responding to my account of what had happened to me. And was he saying that he hopes I get raped again, or that what happened to me was in fact deserved?
What happened to you was deserved.
Okay, that, even worse, as a martial arts and self-defense teacher, even if I wasn't, there are movies that I will not watch. There's some things that are not entertaining. Rape and violence towards animals, I will walk out of that movie. There's certain things that just aren't worthy of a joke or a snide comment. Rape is one of those comments.
Yeah.
Hey, you got what you deserved. It's what you were wearing. I hope it happens again. You're not even a horse's ass. You're less than that. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but that is a soft spot for me. Yeah, you can disagree with someone all day long. You can even call that person a bastard. But to say anything about a rape or a previous rape, you're not human. And I would mute that person, block them. There's no way I would continue. That person is not worthy of conversation. You're just not.
Well, I'm not blocking him for just one reason. I want people to see what a complete idiot he is.
Yeah.
And as I have the same thing. I mean, you don't make jokes about that.
And, you do
not. But there's also the thing that Charis and we, at least I can't speak for Charis, but to me, Charis is family, and she's closer to me than some of my real family.
Yeah.
So when things like that happen, yeah, I tend to go a little bit off the deep end, and I'm not ashamed of it either. So, but in general, I don't like to insult people. If anything, Charis has taught me that things might not be how we perceive them to be, and she's responsible for me changing a lot of my attitude, because I think I was a lot worse before.
I
Way to go,
think you
Charis.
give I think you give me entirely too much credit.
No, I don't. No, I don't, because I'm an atheist, and I was born in an atheist community in a predominantly atheist country. So I cannot
You said there
relate.
was no heaven.
Yeah, there is no heaven. So
You're lucky.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say.
well, some might say that where I live is heaven. We're not perfect, but we have it pretty good here, I think.
You know, you may not, excuse me. I'm trying to wrap my mind around a world that does not involve a God. And I find I'm jealous of your upbringing because, and I think I brought this up in last week's talk, you should never tell a child that you are going to be tortured forever. You should never tell a child that, not even if torture is not even a portion of the conversation. I remember part of the threat was, you will never see your mommy if you don't toe this line. Your mom, your dad, your grandmother, you will never. And I just remember being scared off my ass. And what a horrible thing to say to a kid, and especially from someone who's got power over them. But yet you were brought up in a place where that wasn't even a topic of conversation. That's crazy good. That's wonderful. And I can't imagine, because I know people today in 2017 who are still threatening their children with eternal torment for not towing a make-believe line. And it's disgusting, but I mean, it's still relevant today in America, especially down here in the South.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it relevant, it's actually quite prevalent.
I remember, so when I kind of had enough, the place where I work is very, 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 very wealthy and very, 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 very religious. These are all the people that voted for someone who I did not vote for in the last election. I had had enough. And so that was one of the motivations for me to go get this enormous atheist tattoo on my arm, to kind of let people know, stop talking to me about God. I don't believe as you believe, blah, 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 blah. Cut to, and we'll just call her Joanne. Joanne is trying to do her best to save my eternal soul. And she's doing so by telling me about how much hell's going to be uncomfortable for me. And so I remember telling Joanne, okay, fine. I've read the Bible too. I know what it says. It says I'm going to go to hell. My question for you is, Joanne, knowing what you know about me, do you really think that's what I deserve? Do you think I'm so bad of a person I deserve to be tortured? And she pulled a Stephanie, and where she answered every question but that one. And after 10 minutes, I just said, enough. Answer the damn question. Do you think I'm so bad that I deserve to be tortured forever? And her answer was, Robert, I think my son is so bad that he deserves to be tortured. And I remember cutting her off, and I remember saying, just remember, you threw a relative stranger, me, under the bus, that you can say that your own son, who's not even 10 years old at the time, deserves to be tortured for. How disgusting are you of a human being that you would teach your own son that? And it's something I will just never forget. And you're right, it's so relevant that people are willing to throw their own children underneath the bus to hold on to this ideology. And it's disgusting. And I wish I knew what it's like to live in a society to where we don't teach our children that you're so horrible that we had to murder someone on your behalf. It's just gross.
Well, I think the unfortunate part about this isn't just that. I really doubt that she's so sociopathic that she's just using her son and throwing him under the bus to prove a point. I think she actually does think that the God that she worships is that sadistic. I mean, she thinks that this is actually true. I mean, even if, like, what they say, your emotions against God don't make him false. Just because you don't like him, that doesn't mean he doesn't exist. I really think that she believes that this is correct.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
What worries me the most is that when they do that, they think their God is just, and
Yes.
that he's loving and caring.
They turn
And
morality on its
yes,
head.
yes, and then they say that we don't
That we're
have
immoral.
a source for morality, and we don't have morals. I mean, if your morals are that skewed and that far off, you don't even have the right to comment on my morals.
Sure.
Um,
Well,
but
Christians don't have, if what they say is their actual viewpoint, they don't have morality, because morality comes with choice, comes with evaluation of a situation. They have commands. They are simply a dog who's trained not to jump on the bed. They don't rape and murder because their God told them, don't rape and murder. That's why they have to say
For some
crazy
of them,
stuff. What's that?
right. I was saying for some of them, I mean, I was checking on Twitter, and I saw some conversations in which there would be one Christian over here or another over there, and they're in the minority, but they would say stuff that, the only thing that is keeping them back is the fact that they are commanded not to do these horrible things.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
And
I've
I
had
mean,
plenty.
that's not for all Christians, and it's probably not for most of them. I'd say that most Christians are more moral than the God they profess to follow.
Well, I mean, they all are. We all are more moral than the Christian God. And I've had the exact same conversations with pastors. Some of my friends are pastors who have literally told me the only thing stopping them from raping, murdering, and stealing is the soothing balm of Jesus Christ. And I told them, if that's the case, then by all means keep believing in Jesus. I don't believe you, but by all means keep believing it. But I it blows my mind when I have these discussions, either online or in person, that you actually. I mean, I'll ask you guys: do you really think they believe this stuff?
Yes.
Because if I drowned a single baby, I'd be the biggest monster you'd ever met. But God drowned every baby on the planet when he flooded the universe, apparently. And he's the greatest God of all time. So do you guys really think they believe this stuff? Or they have to say it?
I think most of them believe it. I think many of them are reluctant to admit it. And I
Huh.
think others, um, they are coerced into believing it because if they show doubt, then they have betrayed Christ. And the person who, it's said in scripture, this is just a paraphrase, but the person who has knowledge but denies it, basically their punishment later is even worse than somebody who never even knew the truth.
Huh.
So just by believing now, if they go back on that, if they, like what we've done, we've apostatized, technically it would be worse for us than for somebody like Peter, who's been an atheist all of his life. So if they're in a position right now of believing, of defending their belief, if they really believe in hell, it is essential that they actually believe it. They not let go of that.
So they kind of quote unquote don't have a choice. They're
It takes their choice. It really it keeps them captive. They're held hostage.
well, I guess that kind of explains. I mean, I've gotten, and I think for the most part, we all kind of use the same, be it rape, slavery, and we all kind of use the same trump cards on Christians.
You really had
And
to say trump card.
But, all right, I don't want to use the whole, right? And that when we have these discussions with Christians, and you're like, okay, come on, I don't have kids, but you do. If I told you that the only way to maintain friendship with Robert Reed was to murder your kid, you'd call me a butthole. You'd stop being my friend. There's no way you would honor this request. But on Sundays, someone tells you that this is the actual factual and God told Abraham to do it. All of a sudden, it's the biggest show of grace of all time. And so I was kind of waiting for someone to kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, and say, "No, I really don't believe that crap."
Have you
I guess
seen?
they actually do, and that's what's scary to me.
Robert, have you seen the video that Dan Barker put out?
Which one?
You don't have to go to my basement. It's a short clip from.
Oh yes, yes. I did see that.
Yeah, it was a short clip from a debate that he had where, well, he basically stood in his front yard and told people the same story that God tells in the Bible. You don't have to go to my basement and have to be tortured because I sent my son down there. And I mean that to me that was amazing, and people laugh at that. And then when the Bible says exactly the same thing, then it becomes something moral and something admirable, and that's where they lose me. I mean, that's something I cannot relate to, and because I grew up without all of that. The first time that I was ever in a church was when I was 16 or 17 years old, and the wife of a good friend of mine passed away, and she was Catholic, so they had a Catholic service for her.
Yeah.
And but even then, no one talked about God. He was talked about during the service. He wasn't talked about before or after.
Right.
So I cannot relate, and that's why Charis says she's not. To me, she's one of the most valuable people surrounding me in doing what I do, because she gives me insights that I could never have.
Sure.
I was going to give an insight about the Abraham account, but
go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I'm totally interrupting. Keep going,
No,
Peter.
no, go ahead, because as I said, I cannot relate to all of this. I'm on Twitter because I bumped into a video of Kent Hovind, and I usually say my jaw dropped, and you can still see the dent in the coffee table where it landed. And that's where I started binge watching Hovind, and then I thought I need to react. I need to respond to this, because this is nonsense.
Oh yeah.
And that's where I started my Twitter account. And when at some point I thought, well, I might talk to people on YouTube. So Kent Hovind was top of the list, and he was one of the first people that I've actually talked to.
So you actually got through to Hovind?
Yeah.
Wow. I've tried to get to his kid. Have you ever heard Eric Hovind talk before?
I've sent Eric a couple of emails. I went through the official way through the website they have for Creation Today.
Yeah.
And never got a response at all.
Yeah, Eric Hovind is in league with Seiton Bruggencate, and they do that presuppositional apologetic stuff, which is the equivalent of talking to a third grader with a concussion.
Yeah.
And I watch them online only when I want to have a laugh. I mean, those guys are asshats. It's literally like talking to someone who believes the earth is flat. And so I don't pay them any attention at all whatsoever, and I literally only listen to them when I want to laugh. I mean, they are morons.
One little fun fact.
Yeah.
I practiced before I went on YouTube. I practiced, and I practiced with a presuppositionalist.
Oh no.
And I did this live on his radio show. And over the span of a couple of weeks, we did, I think, 5.5 hours live until I got him so confused and so mad that he said that animal was a biblical kind. To which I asked him, so Noah only had 2 animals on the boat? And then I got thrown off and blocked. And so,
I commend you for lasting 5 hours. I really do.
It was painful.
Oh yeah.
It was extremely painful because at some point we did more than an hour, whether or not I had to check my couch if it would hold.
I really hope nobody is just coming into this conversation. Context.
I have listened to, if you need a reason to induce a headache, listen to Seitan Bruggencate, who I think kind of comes before. If you guys can hear my dogs in the background, I apologize. I've got 2 idiots. So, and no matter what the debate topic is, Seitan Bruggencate always finds a way to take this ridiculous left hand. So let's say the argument is, the last one I remember hearing him talk was, is the church harmful? He will not go any further unless you can justify knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you know things, blah, 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 blah. And no matter what answer you give him, it's irrelevant, because as long as you don't say Jehovah gave me knowledge, he won't accept it. And so the debate topic is null and void. He will just sit there and intellectually masturbate and sit here and say, how do you know that? 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 And it's literally 5 hours of how do you know that? And so I commend you for having the patience of arguing a presuppositional apologist, because I would have hung up the phone. I mean, it's literally like talking to a child.
When you're talking to some of these people and you notice them doing something like that, if it's somebody like Sai, who hangs out with the Hovens, etc., you might want to take a look at Greg Koukl's book, Tactics. It sounds like they've been taking a page from that. Basically, what Greg Koukl is doing is the same thing, and he teaches Christians how to shift the burden of evidence onto the atheist or whoever it is they're discussing with. Even though they're not supposed to be doing that, but he teaches them how to do it very deftly.
Well, I'll say it again. If anyone who's listening to this can get me in touch with Seitan Bruggencate to have a chat, please let him contact me.
Do you really want to do that to yourself?
Oh yes, I really want to do that, because I have a deleted video of Seitan Bruggencate.
Wow.
And in that video, he tells us how he came to presuppositionalism.
Really?
And the fun fact is that he didn't come to presuppositionalism through the Bible or through a revelation of God, as he claims.
Huh.
But guess where he found it?
Where did he find it?
On Google.
Genesis.
No, he did not.
No.
He states that he found it on Google. I have the video on my channel. It's unlisted, so people can't access it, because I don't want to have it taken down by Mr. Seitan Bruggencate.
Right.
But I have it on a channel, and I have it saved on my computer, so I can pull it up anytime I want to. He's interviewed by someone that was for his own website, by the way. That's where he posted it. And he said, well, I was so terrible at apologetics that I needed to find something different because I lost every debate I was in. And so I went on Google to find
Oh my God.
something. Yeah, to find something that I could actually win a debate with. And then he stumbled onto presuppositionalism, and that's where he adopted it. So he's a presuppositionalist, not because that's what he believes or what God revealed to him. He is a presuppositionalist because he is too stupid to argue and found a way on Google to get out of it.
Oh my God.
I think more to the point, he's more concerned about tactics than he is about truth.
Yeah.
No question. I watched a debate between he and Aaron Ra, in which Aaron Ra absolutely dunked on him for 45 solid minutes.
Yep.
And at the very, very end, there are actually two debates that I absolutely love. One with Matt Dillahunty, one with Aaron Ra.
Yeah.
And at maybe the 40-minute mark, Aaron Ra said, you know, in order for a presuppositionalist to make their argument, because they don't have an argument, they will actually argue that reality isn't real. And he called his shot, telling them they don't have a leg to stand on. Their only argument is to say that reality is not real. And not 60 seconds after that, that's exactly what Psy did. And he argued pretty much this could all be, you know, what, like the Matrix or Brain in the Vat.
Yeah.
Which, and you know, if someone tells you this is what you're going to say, you would think you would kind of take another turn to kind of prove that person wrong. But he was absolutely right. And in another debate I watched with Matt Dillahunty, Matt didn't even wait for Psy to make any statements. He made a statement. He prepared a statement saying pretty much Psy is going to say X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
this response
he
the debate.
He wrote a rebuttal the week before the debate.
Yeah, so you saw the same thing.
Yeah, I saw it a couple of times. I'm a huge fan of Dillahunty.
Yeah, Matt's fantastic, and I mean that's why guys like Psy. I mean, it scares me. Not that, and on a very small scale. And if anyone is Jewish, listen, I apologize for this reference. Adolf Hitler doesn't scare me. One guy sitting in a room saying I hate Jews doesn't scare me. The fact that he got followers to do what he said to do, that's what scares me. Cy Tim Bruggencate sitting in a corner spouting stupid stuff, how do you know this, how do you know this, doesn't scare me. Cy Tim Bruggencate has followers. I've watched his videos and you scroll down through the comments saying, oh, you won the debate. That's what scares me. That people will listen to that and say, he nailed it. Psy doesn't scare me. His follow, like God, I don't believe in God at all. God's followers scare me. The people who bomb abortion clinics, who tell gay people they're going to go to hell. I'm not afraid of an invisible man in the sky. I'm afraid of his representatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And well, and there's another thing. Some of them don't scare me. But you just made the analogy, and I'll follow up on the analogy. There are followers that don't speak out and don't say anything when there's obvious wrongdoing.
Oh yeah,
and
to me that's
and they just point at another religion who might be at that point doing something a little bit more terrible, to have an excuse for their own religion. And
what about ism?
What about what?
It's what about ism?
Which ism?
What about ism?
Yeah, it's
a word.
What about them? Look
what
at them.
What aboutism?
It's pretty much what little children do in the playground. If they get called out, don't do that. Well, look at him. He's doing worse.
Or if you
Oh,
get pulled
yes.
over speeding, and then, like you were going 7 over, and somebody passed you going 17 over, but you
Yeah.
get pulled over. What about them?
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
aboutism?
I think I'm following, and that's, if I can tie this in, that's one of the reasons why I got active on Twitter. Is to me, if you're not speaking out against a crime, you are part of the crime. If you sit and watch a kid get their ass kicked and you don't do anything, you're almost as bad as the person kicking that kid's ass.
Yeah.
And I originally had a Twitter account because I do radio and TV here in Texas. And they said you need social media because people need to follow you. That's part of being, for lack of a better term, a public figure. Well, at first, that's the reason why. But then my anti-theism just kind of kicked in. And so my platform for, hey, look at me on channel 4 became, hey, we need to stop following the Bible. Hey, you need to stop cutting your kids' foreskin off. Hey, you need to stop beating your kids because the Bible said, spare the rod, spoil the child. It became a way for me to challenge and ask questions that for the first 39 years of my life, I couldn't ask. And again, I go back to my brother. For all the people who follow Kim Davis, think she's a hero and stuff like that, people need to speak out against these idiots. There's just no
Follow
nice way
Kim
to
Davis
put
with
it.
a comb.
What's that?
Like to follow Kim Davis with a hairbrush.
Have
I
you
would like to
guys
follow Kim Davis with my size 14 foot.
have you guys seen the latest on Kim Davis?
The guy that
Oh,
she
the
denied her
runner-up?
marriage license to is now running against her for county clerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's amazing.
I think it's amazing, and what's scary to me, because I was born and raised in the South, I don't think he's a shoo-in.
No.
Because we are still having to have a conversation on whether Roy Moore is going to get reelected or not.
Yeah.
Right. We have
I'm-
video of Roy Moore talking about evolution is the reason why kids are bad because we teach them they're animals.
Yeah.
There's video of Roy Moore talking about when we talk about, well, when were the good old days of America? Roy Moore said slavery. When Roy Moore is asked, do you date 14-year-old girls? His
Not
response
without the
is,
permission of their mother.
yeah, I asked the mother's permission. That should absolutely destroy your chances of reelection. But instead, he's a legit candidate. Kim Davis broke the law. Kim Davis is a religious bigot, and she is still a relevant topic of conversation. She gets awards from people like Tony Perkins, from the Family Council, whatever the hell. She's still relevant. So that's what I'm saying. It's scary to me being born and raised in the South, knowing she's still in the running. Just because her opponent is a gay man, you, me, Charis can say it should be a shoo-in, but the American public, it's not a shoo-in. We're in the South. She could possibly win this thing, and that's scary.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was kind of nice because he has a GoFundMe and he's getting money from all over the world, people supporting him. And
I'm glad you said that because I will donate to his campaign.
yeah, I think I'll see if I can find it and tweet it again.
I think you just opened it last week.
Yeah, I sent out a tweet, and that also leads to the article, and I think to his GoFundMe campaign. So
I will look
I
him
think
up. I will donate because this. Here's again the reason why I speak out on Twitter. The reason why you may detect a little bit more of a vitriolic tone via Twitter versus my verbal. This stuff has got to stop. It's over. It's got to stop. Sorry. That's my oldest.
You might hear my bird at some point, so don't feel
I've got
bad.
my little squirt bottle, so I'm trying to keep them quiet. Fine. I can't stop people from believing that a virgin gave birth. I can't stop that. I wish I could, but I can't. What I can try and what we all can try and help to stop is to minimize the damage that follows the belief that a virgin gave birth to a healthy baby boy. If that's what you want to believe on Sundays, knock yourself out. I personally believe the most powerful member of the Justice League is the Green Lantern, not Superman. If I tried to get laws passed based on that belief, I would be just as much of a bigot as people who believe that a man walked on water. So that's why I kind of get on Twitter and do what I do and say what I say and battle people like Stephanie and Heather, because it's time for this stuff to stop.
Mhm.
We've put people on the moon. We have iPhones and iPads and computers. We have cures for diseases that we didn't have just 50 years ago. It's time for this crap to stop. It
But
really
Robert, those iPhones and computers are for, are God's new way of spreading the gospel.
is. You know what? You're absolutely right. And I have had this conversation with Christians before. 2,000 years ago, when and I'm sure I can find women who still think this way, menstruation was once a demonic possession. That's how archaic our thinking was.
I still hold that opinion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We could probably still, but once upon a time, the actual factual was when a woman bled between her legs, that was demonic. We now know it's a part of nature. That's what the human body does when it doesn't detect pregnancy. My point is, God could not stop. Back then, God was parting seas. He was making miracles. He was a glory hound back then. Now we have recording devices. We have every 17-year-old kid with an iPhone is an investigative reporter. Why doesn't God make himself known now, when we could actually record a bush burning without it being consumed? When we could
He does make
actually.
himself known. All of creation testifies the glory of God.
Gotcha. I got to write that down. I got to write that down.
Yeah, well,
Do
I
you
think
want more?
wasn't it Matt Dillahunty who said it, that God seems to be able to create everything except the things that people can create.
Now,
God,
what? Say that
God,
again?
God can create everything except the things that people can create. He can't
Oh,
build.
he's chosen to let us create those things.
Yeah, but he can't make a car. He can't even write a book. He has.
Peter, you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes.
I
Oh,
got into a fight with. So I mean, I don't think I'm too prolific with my insults with Christians, but there was one lady, Cindy, who I called a lying sack of shit, because I've never gone against anyone this dishonest on Twitter. And it started out with Stephanie accusing me of being a drug addict because I smoke pot because I'm in chronic pain. And me and Stephanie eventually dropped it. And then Cindy picked it up and told me, my addiction to pot is clouding my view of Jesus Christ. I remember telling her, my sister, whose glasses are so thick she can see the future, she has horrible eyesight. My sister can see me through the marijuana smoke. So if God can't see me through the marijuana smoke and find me, he is the most incompetent being on the stinking planet. And it just, again, this guy can do everything. He can create a universe in 6 days. He can impregnate a virgin. He can part a sea. But what he can't seem to do is communicate clearly with humans. because there are 33,000 plus different varieties of just Christianity, dozen different translations of just the Holy Bible. If there's a God that's out there, he's the most bumbling communicator of all time.
Well, when
And
they bring
just
that at
based,
you, I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I'm just thinking, you know, them saying that smoking pot clouds your I don't know what they mean, judgment or comprehension for the things of God. Ask them, what is the youngest person to their knowledge who has gotten saved? What is the youngest mind that they believe that God has communicated his truth to?
Hmm.
And
I've kind
from
of asked.
there, I mean,
Go ahead.
I've seen testimonies of 4-year-olds getting saved. I mean, we know, you know, how developmentally, you know, small a 4-year-old is. I would wager that they still believe that you are a little bit more mentally able right now in, you know, your current buff debating pot smoking state than a 4-year-old. And if God can communicate his truth to a 4-year-old
Mm.
to the point that that 4-year-old nation that they apparently deserve, then he can communicate it to you.
That's an excellent point, actually. And if I can dig back into my old Christian days, I think the answer they would give me, excuse me, would be, I don't want to see it. I mean, Stephanie said it last week. That's something that I would have said when I was a Christian boy. The 4-year-old, they would say, is like a pure soul. The 4-year-old wants to see the risen Christ or accept the risen Christ. As Stephanie
Well, then
said it
she's
last week, that the only thing stopping a non-believer from believing is the non-believer, which to me at this point is fake it till you make it.
well, you know what she's done with that?
What's that?
She's totally conceded the point of pot. She was just using the point of you smoking pot as clouding your vision of God. But, you know, when she goes to a different argument, you know, I mean, come on. What you just said about, well, now you just don't want to, that's totally not even connected to pot in any way, shape, or form. As long as there are multitudes of non-pot smokers who are not part of the Christian faith.
I mean, let's be clear one thing about Stephanie, and I don't want to bash the hell out of her. Stephanie's dishonest, right? There's nothing that you can say to Stephanie that's going. She will always find a way out. I have caught, be it my pot usage, my mental illness. Stephanie has said A, and then when called out on A, she always backpedals to B. So I mean, I could
Don't let
ask
her.
her, what's that?
Just don't let her.
Oh,
Don't even.
last week I did it, and Peter was better at it than I was. In that you have to call her out, and again, Peter was way better than I was. You have to hold her feet to the fire, and that when she says A, you have to keep her on task A, because again, she wrote a blog once about mental illness, and part of my Twitter tirade on top of the whole Jesus thing is I'm 45. And when I was a kid, there was no such thing as mental illness. You were just undisciplined. So people just literally beat you when you had whatever episode you were having. We now know bipolar is real. We know schizophrenia is real. And so to still link mental illness to invisible people, to demons or anything of intellectual irresponsibility, that's almost criminal. So long story short, I called her out and was like, don't do that. Just stop. If you don't have an answer, just at minimum say, I don't know. But don't link atheism to mental illness. Mental illness is linked to science. Please stop doing that. And she completely disavowed linking atheism to mental illness. Stephanie's just slippery. She's slippery to the point to where I'm trying not to call her a liar, but she can be dishonest at times. Someone like Peter is better. He needs to call her out because I'm not as skilled as he is when it comes to that.
Well, she should thank him for that, because the truth shall set her free.
But I don't think someone like that, and I will paraphrase Daniel Dennett. When people like us have conversations with Christians, this is not the same as saying, you know what, Stephanie, your meatloaf recipe sucks. Criticism. There's no nice way to tell someone your worldview is stupid. Your worldview is wrong, right? There's just no easy or nice way to say, look, grow up. A virgin didn't get pregnant. Stop believing stupid shit. And so when you go that far, they dig their heels in. We are confronting everything they believe to be true. Right? If you tell me I added too much salt to my gumbo recipe, I need to listen to that. If you tell me that Brahma is not real, if I'm a Hindu, you have shaken my core beliefs at their core. And there's just no nice way to do it. So that's why they dig their heels in, and someone like Peter can call them out all day long. They're going to get pissy and they're going to not accept what we say.
Well, I'll have to step in because and Charis can confirm this, because I thought you did a great job in holding well, Stephanie didn't say that much, but at least holding Heather to the point that you questioned her about. So
thank you.
It's not a contest in who's doing it better. I think you did great in putting forward your points and making it clear that you want an answer to the question that you've asked, and not an answer to a question that hasn't come up so far. And that's what we're doing at the moment. And we have someone in the live chat, a huge fan of Stephanie, Florida line, and she asked me before we even went live. She asked me yesterday or the day before, I guess.
You're being sarcastic, right?
A little bit. Florida line will understand it and will love it that I say it the way that I say it. But she asked me a question when I told her that you were going to come on. What's going to happen on Monday? Are you still going to be on Coffee Talk?
Am I? Oh, absolutely.
Is Coffee Talk still on?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Oh, that means that I seem to have pissed off Jesus.
Pissed off Jesus?
Yes. Well, Stephanie sent me a DM that Jesus spoke to her, and that he asked Stephanie to walk away from the big bad atheists for a little while.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, because Jesus.
Our Jesus, or
so?
Because we have a Jesus, we have hippie Jesus. Is it our Jesus, or is it
no? Stephanie's Jesus.
Okay.
But it seems now, because she's still interacting with atheists on Twitter, and if you're still going to be on Coffee Talk this Monday, then
as far as I know,
disobeying her king.
Well, then the only conclusion I can draw here is that Jesus must have singled me out, because the talk that we had planned, Stephanie and I, has been postponed.
You know, here's my quick side note on stuff like that. This is what chaps my hide about the Jesus claims. And I've had this conversation with Christians, excuse me, in my personal life. Jesus can visit Stephanie and cancel coffee talk or postpone coffee talk or tell her not to talk to atheists or whatever the case may be. But right now, there is a child in the Vatican who's being bent over a pew and being sodomized. That child isn't asking God or Jesus or the ghost or whoever it is. He's begging those guys, stop this from happening. And God isn't answering that child. But God takes his time out of his day to tell people like Stephanie, don't talk to atheists. That type
but
of
Robert, he is answering the child. He's either saying no or not right now, or it's for a higher purpose that only I can see.
Excellent comeback. That is disgusting to me. And again, I'm going to keep bringing this up because, again, screw me. I'm nobody. But I work with sexual assault and rape survivors. Where was this? When Tim Tebow scores a touchdown, God was present. When those ladies and those 15-year-old girls come to me, apparently this bastard is nowhere to be found.
Oh no, he was there every step of the way.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Loving
He just went
them.
through with the rapist. The rapist had free will, right? That's the problem. Is that what I'm missing?
And he was putting them through the refining fires, testing their faith.
Gotcha. I have to write that down. I got to
purifying them and setting them aside for his purpose later. Eventually, it will all work out for his glory.
Okay. So another child has to have cancer and die before they're 14 for his greater
Higher
purpose.
ways. Higher ways.
His ways aren't like ours, right?
Right.
This is classic, and I tweeted this yesterday or maybe the day before. One of the things I tell the ladies that come to my class is battered spouse syndrome. And if you ask me right now, I could probably only come up with 3. I always forget the damn 4th. But there are 4 criteria that people have to meet in order to become battered spouses, men or women. And the very first diagnosable criteria is the belief that the violence being brought upon you is some way, somehow your fault.
Your fault.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And it's just like, I've told Christians this before. Go look this up for yourself. Battered spouse and Christianity is the exact same animal. And I've had people tell me that I hate keep bringing this up, but I just had one 8 hours ago. The women in my class that have been raped and sexually assaulted, it's because, God, I hate even saying this out loud, so please forgive me. It's their fault. It's because someone ate an apple 2,000 fucking years ago that we have rape. That Mr. and Mrs. Johnson bury their children because of some horrible disease because some naked woman ate an apple. And it
never said apple, it's a fruit.
I'm sorry, yes, and I've been corrected by that from Christians, which is, to Peter's credit, right? You're not answering the actual damn question. You're hung up on stuff that doesn't matter, right?
I would never.
Well, how do we know it was an apple, Robert? I don't care if it was a kumquat or a watermelon.
Likely a mango.
It's amazing the circles that these people can go through to justify this ridiculous belief that a 14-year-old girl earned sexual assault or rape because someone ate a damn piece of fruit. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I have countered that on a couple of occasions by asking them if they had children, and if they had children, So now, if they were to insult me or do me wrong in any way, do I get to beat up their kids?
Well, see, it goes farther than them deserving rape. They deserve eternal hellfire. So
Yes.
rape is actually getting it light.
Yes. I've gotten that response. Believe it or not, I've gotten that response.
Guess
That,
how I believe it.
yes, rape is temporary. The 50
It's only a
minutes, 10,
violation of
whatever
your
that.
body.
Exactly. Oh my God. Have you been listening to all my conversations? It is
You don't know
temporary.
my history, do you?
Okay. Compared to the eternity in either hell or heaven. And when I've asked them things like, excuse me. So let me get this right. I teach women, and if I teach 50 self-defense seminars in a year, 30 of them will be for free. I feel like I'm war profiteering. I hate it. So half of them I give them away. A quarter of them are actually to church groups, believe it or not. It's just the right thing to do to teach people how to defend themselves. So I've asked them, excuse me. So let's say the person who rapes one of my women, this person finds Jesus sometimes before he or she dies. That person goes to hell or goes to heaven. They get to party forever. Let's say one of the women that I train in self-defense is Muslim, Jewish, Zoroastrian, atheist, name something other than your brand of Christianity. She gets to burn in hell forever. Do you actually think that's the right thing to, that's justice? And the answers I get are somewhere in between I don't know and I don't believe that's going to happen. And
Oh,
this,
fundamentalists would have a different response.
would they come right out and say that my rape survivor is going to go to hell?
Yes, but not because she's a rape survivor,
Oh, Jesus Christ, don't say
but
it. Don't say it.
but because she has rejected the free gift
Oh,
of salvation
my
that was
God.
given to them by the Almighty Creator of the universe, and the fact that they would throw that through His teeth, His gift, that would make them deserving of hellfire. It would have nothing to do with their rape. Keep in mind, I am not here believing this. I am only giving one of the responses that would be heard.
I think
I am.
for the sake of conversation, Charis, give
Yes.
Robert a quick rundown of your history.
Robert, I am a previous fundamentalist and street preacher.
Mm. Wow.
And wife of a street preacher.
Wow.
So, and also the survivor of a rape by said street preacher.
Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry.
It's thanks. I would say it's okay, but it is not yet. I am still anonymous here. I am on Twitter, though privately.
Yeah.
So when I give you these responses, it's because I know. And I've been there from the perspective of the fundamentalist, from the perspective of the fundy woman who has both taken it and dished it out.
Yeah.
I have been both perpetrator and victim of all of this.
I would say God
So,
bless you, but I don't believe in God. But that I am sorry.
and that's only some of it. It gets really, really, I'm smiling because it's so sadistic, and it's that, or start, just doing my aerobics at my computer screen.
Yeah, and that's oh Jesus Christ. That's I remember Christopher Hitchens saying it's amazing the offenses you can get away with if you just declare yourself pastor or preacher.
And he's been a deacon, and with his He raped me to prevent himself from falling back into the sin of porn
Oh my
because
God.
he did not want to sin.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is
I know.
a soft spot for me. Excuse me. I am not going to try and match your story. That's not what I'm going for. But I was once married to a hardcore Catholic, and our sex life was stifled because of Catholicism. I'll just
Yeah.
say that. I was not raped or anything like that. This is not me trying to one up you at all. But my point is the stranglehold that religion has on sex and sexuality is
Yeah.
immeasurably disturbing. And the same lady who told me that her own son deserved hell before she told me I deserve hell, she invited me to one of her church services, and I went because I have that kind of time and I like to torture myself. And it just so happened she took me during the month of sexual sin. 1 week was homosexuality, one was premarital sex, one was porn and masturbation, and the last one that I just didn't have the endurance was what married couples could and could not do sexually. They had an entire discussion on pornography. That was so disgusting that was the last one. And I remember cussing the people out who invited me to go. When you put such a negative value on people's natural sexual urges, you are going to create monsters. Now, rapists are going to rape because they're rapists. That's the bottom line. I'm not excusing them at all. But my point is, it's like anything else. Well, with sex seems to be the only thing that we, in terms of our natural desires, that we put this negative connotation on. If someone's hungry, we tell them to eat a sandwich. When someone is sleepy, we tell them to go take a nap. When someone is scared, we tell them to defend themselves. Sex is a natural impulse, but we put this negative value on it to where you can't watch porn, you can't masturbate, you can't have a one night stand because you think someone's hot. I can go on for hours. This is part of the problem. And again, this is why I stand up on Twitter and in my personal life to try and get people to at least think about the garbage that they're spewing, because it's poisonous. There is no benefit in telling someone you can't be horny, or you can only be horny if you have a wedding ring on and you promised before an invisible sky wizard that you're going to honor this person forever type of crap. And I'm sorry, being married to a street preacher sounds like a prison sentence. It just does.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
I'm
really
not
sorry that you had to go through
exactly,
that.
I'm not a really outgoing person naturally. Sometimes I am, but usually I'm not.
Yeah.
And um, the version of street preaching that we went for was the Living Waters version by Ray Comfort, Kirk
Oh
Cameron,
no.
Todd Friel, and they put they put such an emphasis on the actual preaching, the actual cold contact witnessing. And I'm the kind where if I talk to somebody at all, it'll be because one, they initiate a conversation, or two, I'm asking where the bathroom is, or um, or three, I might pass out, tracts, literature. Tracts are Christian literature for those who don't know what a tract is. Um, but that was considering the beginning point, and the idea is to progress. And if you're not progressing, they shame you because obviously your fear of man is worse than your fear of God.
Wow. Wow.
So being in this, and I'm, in a way, I was kind of to blame for the whole street preaching shenanigans, because I'm somebody who I want to do what's right. And the Bible says, if you are not being rejected by this world, if you're of the world, you are not of God. If you're not, basically, if you're not getting persecuted, you're doing something wrong.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I brought this up. So we started looking into evangelism, because obviously, if we're not making a big enough stink and we're respected by the world, we need to change.
You're not doing it right.
Right. So that's kind of how we got into evangelism. He did some searches. We found living waters. Bada bing, bada boom.
Wow. That's the hard part for me. And I remember, I mean, I would say that's the double-edged sword, but it's not even double-edged. And that when we confront Christians, when we, for lack of a better term, batter Christians, we're feeding into Second Timothy, right?
Yeah.
And that the only way the Christian knows they're doing it right is if we're talking shit. If we get so frustrated that we call them morons. If we, just you're acting childish for believing that a snake talked. And that's kind of the, where do we go from here as atheists? How do we get our point across without feeding into the persecution complex that Second Timothy teaches is the way to go?
Well, especially when it teaches the Christian that the wisdom of God will seem like foolishness to men.
Exactly. I mean, this puts us at this extreme disadvantage in that, well, again, how do we have fruitful conversations with Christians without feeding into the persecution complex? Take the Ray Comforts out because he's an extremist. Take Pat
Robertson.
out. Christian, how do you talk to them without feeding into that persecution complex? Because I've had conversations with many Christians here in Texas where they will tell me they are being persecuted. And I'm like, you wouldn't know persecution if it were a persecution t-shirt, had persecution brass knuckles, and punched you in the face. You guys have the run of the land here in America. And I've had Christians literally tell me I'm being persecuted because people laugh at me. I'm
Well,
like, you have, go
if
ahead.
laughing, if laughing, just laughing is enough to be considered persecution, ask them also, do they think that people of other faiths can be persecuted for their faith? Muslims. Can a Muslim experience persecution for his or her faith? If they answer yes to that, ask them about, well, you just said that somebody laughing at you, is you being persecuted. If somebody laughs at a Muslim for being Muslim, is that Muslim being persecuted? If a Christian laughs at an atheist, is that also Christian persecution, albeit the opposite way, gives Christian persecution an entirely different name. They're not if we reduce persecution to be any sort of reaction that is not accepting, then how often are they now guilty of persecuting others? If persecution is a bad thing, then how often do they engage in it in their reactions with others? Are they persecuting other people?
I am thinking about one response in particular. Someone who's in my personal life, and the reason why doing that to a Muslim is not persecution is because we are a Christian country.
Okay,
So,
what about?
yes. What about what?
Well, that he wouldn't actually make sense with that, because in Muslim countries they talk about Christians being persecuted. And if the Muslim is persecuting a Christian, do they now say it's no longer persecution towards the Christian because that is a Muslim country. So really make them look at their double standard. If they apply that standard here for the US of A, they have to apply that standard in a Muslim country. Are those Christians in the Muslim country now not experiencing persecution because of the fact that they reside in a Muslim country?
I'm almost afraid.
Ask it very gently. You have to do it gently.
What you're basically doing, when the way you explain it, Charis, that's epistemology.
Oh.
Epistemology is a way of asking questions in a non-threatening way to make them think or rethink their own positions. And that's exactly what you just explained. They have a position about their way of thinking in Art Brouwer just threw it in, street epistemology. That's
It's
basically
street evangelist for the atheists.
No,
I know.
no.
I'm just
because it's the opposite of evangelizing. It is making someone clear about what they believe and what conclusions they have made. And
don't forget, this is a method, and it is also used by Christians. This is not just an atheist thing.
I know
Christians also use epistemology. They just can't be quite as effective with it.
They just attribute it to God.
But it's an awesome tool to have, and it's a great way of approaching someone in a non-threatening way, and you don't throw in your own thoughts or your own beliefs, or you don't throw in facts or science or anything. You just ask them questions in a way so that they really start to think, and they have to think about the conclusions they've drawn.
In Christian speak, you're planting seeds.
But can we trust them to honestly think?
Well, the way you ask, I always tell people, go to the site of Anthony Magnabosco. He's the one who I think has perfected the method, and I'm currently talking with him. He agreed to be a guest somewhere soon. The holidays are coming up, so it could be that that's going to be in 2018. But I don't care. I just want to talk to the man, because I think what he's doing is awesome, and I'm still learning from what he does. And but it is I think the best method to make people think, and it's a non-threatening way. And if you ask the questions and they give you the answers of what they think, because the way you're asking your questions is just a way for them to share what they believe. So if they're answering in a dishonest way, then they're messing with their own message. So they're not likely to do that.
But the foundation of their ways is dishonesty, is it not?
Yes, but it's not how they see it. And correct me if I'm
also remember, many of them are held hostage. A lot of them are trying to justify it and are having to twist themselves into pretzels to do it.
That's what I'm saying. I wonder if, like, when I was when I was tapping people on the shoulder, telling them they're going to go to hell, there was always something about me that said, this is crap. Now, I am not, academically, I am a C student. I am a retired NFL football player who has brain damage, and I have a mental illness. And if someone like me with my academic and mental resume can say, I figured it out, it makes me wonder, are other people just lying? Because every time I said, yes, Noah actually built an ark, there was a part of me that said, this is a bullshit story. This isn't real. Every time I said a virgin got pregnant, every time someone said, oh, I'm going to go to hell, oh, that's rich. Tell me where it is. And I said, it's in the spirit world. There was a part of me that said, this just doesn't make sense. So there's no way I'm the only person who's thinking this is garbage. I mean, right? I'm not alone here.
You're not alone, but the people who genuinely believe that this is true with every fiber of their being are also not alone.
Say that
There are
again. I'm sorry.
people, you're not alone in that, but also the people who 100% believe it is true are not alone. I mean, it's not, cookie cutter. It's pretty much a spectrum.
Okay, so this is like, take someone as extreme as Ray Comfort. Do you really think when the cameras are off, when he is alone at night, that Ray Comfort actually believes the crap that comes out of his mouth?
Yes.
And I would say no. I would say no. And the reason why I would say no is because Ray Comfort had, for instance, evolution explained to him 1,000 times.
Yes.
He had it explained to him at length on the Atheist Experience. He had it explained to him at length in a subsequent debate with Matt Dillahunty. He had it explained to him in a debate with Aaron Ra. They went out of their way to explain it to him in a way that he can understand it. And the very next day, he still asks the same stupid question, knowing that the way he's proposing evolution is not what the theory actually says.
A
So
person can have something explained to them. That doesn't mean that it registers with them or that they necessarily believe it.
Really?
Yes, but in case of Ray Comfort, I still think that Ray Comfort is in it for the money. He is scooping up a couple of million a year. That's not something he's going to step away from.
I know. But that also does not mean
everything you're saying in terms of they believe it.
His ministry is located in a 1.2 million house that he lives in.
I'm not saying that his conduct is becoming. I'm saying that I think that he believes what he preaches.
No joke. Okay.
I'm not saying that he's upstanding. I'm not saying that he's not secretly immoral. I'm not saying that he's not being hypocritical as far as, practicing what you preach all the time or practicing the type of morality that you would like to put forth. I'm saying when it comes to things like the ark, evolution, I don't think that he believes in evolution.
Wow.
And I'm not sure. I'm on the fence with, at least with Ray Comfort. When it comes to Kent Hovind actually knows what the theory of evolution is, and he accepts it. He just renames it and says that there are limits within it.
Microevolution versus macro.
He even says macroevolution is possible, but it has limits.
Hmm.
And I have on in the talk that we had, I've asked him what is the mechanism that causes the limits, and that's a question he can't answer.
I guess what
So
bothers me is ah, this. I mean, we are in such a different society now, in that again, we have horseless carriages. I've got this enormous thing in my living room that descrambles satellite images and plays TV shows in my living room.
mhm.
We have cars now that don't require gasoline. So
Those are dangers, you know. They
yeah, it blows my mind to sit here
they
and
threaten
think
God.
that people, I don't care how devout you are on YouTube or whatever the case may be, it's just hard for me to wrap my mind around at night when no one's around that you don't accept modern technology and modern science. When someone tells you that the earth is billions of years old, I can understand when you're sitting on the pulpit, you have to make money. It's less than 10,000 years old. There's an invisible white guy with a robe and sandals and a beard, and he's grumpy, and he made it in 10,000 years. Okay, you're trying to pad your bottom line. But when at night, when no one's around you, and you could literally talk to your iPhone and say, "Hey Siri, how old is the Earth?" And look, my iPhone just picked that up.
Well, remember when Paul said science so-called?
Say
Yeah.
that again.
When Paul in the Bible said, called science so-called,
Yeah. I mean, is
so-called
that what they're
science, so-called knowledge. Yes, a person can actually believe this at night
okay?
in bed
Yeah.
and
What's
believe
what's
that the billions of years is a big deception.
what was
Then
that? What was it first? Professing they were wise, they became fools. What's
fools. Yeah.
so
Okay.
the
If
Bible?
that's the case, those are the people that I will say. Those are the people I won't have conversations with. If it's a waste of time. If I tell you I live in Austin,
I was
and
one
you
of
just
them.
refuse to listen to that and say, no, you live in New Braunfels. I can demonstrate Austin. I can define Austin. I can show you my home address. But you just refuse to listen to that. And you say, nope, nope, you live in New Braunfels. I can't have a conversation with that person. If someone refuses to listen to actual scientific discovery, like a Ray Comfort, like a Kent and Eric Hovind,
They actually used that very argument that you just used.
what's that?
If if I can demonstrate exactly who I am, where I'm from, but you can see that evidence, but you refuse to acknowledge the glory of God that's all around us, then my job here is done if I've given you the gospel and now it's up to God.
Okay.
Because you're beyond what I have the power or authority to do or say.
Okay.
So I'm
Then
just saying, like, that argument is, I'm not saying that they use it properly or adequately or correctly. I'm just saying that they use it.
and I hear every word you're saying, and I don't think I was on the same level as you, it sounds like, but I used to evangelize myself. And again, I guess there's a part of me that refuses to believe I'm unique because I'm academically not that smart. But when I tap people on their shoulder and preach to them, there was a part of me that said, you don't believe this. And I quoted the exact same things out of the Bible that you just quoted. I did everything that you were quote unquote supposed to do, but there was always a part of me that, you know, this one chapter after this talks about a snake that talked, but yet this is supposed to be a perfect book.
If you believe in a God who can work any miracle, if you believe in any miracle at all, then you can believe in God making a little snake talk.
Yep.
If you can suspend, you know, your rational thought long enough to believe in the suspension of, you know, scientific laws, of natural laws, if you can suspend your thinking for that long, or just the moment it takes to believe that Jesus walked on water, then you can believe that God made a little snake talk.
Okay. But I believed all that stuff. And it just, like I said, I read the Bible. I said all the things I'm supposed to say. And I preached everything I was supposed to preach, but there was always something sitting on my shoulder asking myself, do you really believe this stuff?
Yeah, I had that, and then I kept having mine was, God, this sounds so stupid. And it's not necessarily that I didn't believe it, it's that I knew how stupid it sounded.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And I mean, I've seen enough stupid, real crap in my life to know that stupid things can be real, unfortunately. So my own history was kind of working against me there. But I mean, I knew how stupid it sounded, but I also knew the consequences of apostasy,
Yes.
eternal damnation. And I did believe in an actual, literal, physical hell. And when you have that belief, then that, you know, that will keep you in prison. Basically, it's over your head. And if you, if you turn your back on what you believe is the truth, then perhaps you were never saved in the first place. As Ray Comfort would put it, you can't backslide. There's no such thing as a backsliding Christian. If you're backsliding,
True.
turning your back on God, chances are you never slid forward in the first place, is how he puts it. You were never actually saved, so you were actually always destined for hell, and I didn't want to be in that boat. So it was either believe this or, you know, be in hell. But the problem is that's just not how belief works. I mean, you know, as Todd Friel, host of Wretched, would say, is your shoelace a banana peel? Your shoelace is either, you can either believe your shoelace is a banana peel or you can't. But if you can
I
get
will
yourself
say,
to the point of convincing yourself of something that you don't actually believe, I think there might be a term in the DSM for that.
there's,
Can I throw something in, because it's been referenced a couple of times in the chat now, and we're moving on a little. You made a comment that at some point you think it's useless talking to people. I would disagree, and a couple of people in the chat commented on that as well, because it's not useless. I mean, Charis is an example.
Dan Barker.
Yes, you're not going to convince. You're not going to convince the one you're talking to, and that's something that I've learned doing this. I haven't convinced anyone I ever talked to, but other people will listen. Other people will read your tweets, and you will make them think. And I have had a couple of people coming to me and telling me, listen, what you do, I had my doubts, but by following you on Twitter and following you on YouTube, I now have made the step, and I'm now coming out as an atheist. I stopped believing. So a dogfight.
Yep, dogfight. Sorry about that. Listen.
No problem. So what you do is still important, because you may not reach the person that you're talking to,
Right.
but instead you could be reaching a couple of others.
Or you
Sure.
might not reach that person yet. You probably won't reach
Yeah.
them right away.
Now, I
In my
agree with
case,
that. I mean,
I
a
joined
friend
an
of mine.
entire.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wasn't reached by just one atheist. I made the decision to see how atheists actually are. Oh, here's another thing. A lot of this ties into what I'm saying. Anyway, I'll finish that thought. I went to see how atheists actually are because I'd been taught what atheists think and what they believe and how they act. I'd been taught that by Christians about atheists, but I'd never actually gotten it from the horse's mouth, from atheists themselves. So I went kind of into the lion's den, as it were, and joined a rather prominent atheist community. And I learned what they were like and what they actually thought about things and why. And that's that, and the accounts of a few other people was what did it for me. And the final straw for me was a scientist, but who said, it doesn't matter how much proof is against the Bible. Even if he believes it's true, he has to choose the Bible over truth. And I have too much respect for the truth that, I snapped, and that was it. Like, if the Bible goes against truth that much, it's not true.
Yeah, I had a similar, a very, 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 and I referenced this when I was with Peter last week, in terms of when I liken God and the God relationship to a bad insurance policy. My very, 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 very bestest, dearest friend at the time was a out and out atheist, and I'm still kind of trying to hold on to what's left of my Christianity. And he would always ask just these simple sentences that would just stump the shit out of any Christianity I could throw at the guy. And it just got to a point, and the last question I remember was kind of, what's the one unique good that comes with Christianity that can't be done without it? And I had no answer for him. And it was just these desperate attempts to keep holding on to what you thought was true. And even after I couldn't answer my friend Simon, I still held on to it because that's what I was taught to do. Even though everything about me said, you need to dump this until someone can prove it to actually be true. And I still maintain, like I said last week, if someone shows me I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it. If you tell me, if you can demonstrate and define a God, I'll admit I'll stop being an atheist at that moment. But up to this point, it just hasn't come true. It's not real. It's not something I can put my finger on. So I'm not going to force myself into a box that just doesn't make sense. That's why I continually ask when I see the Todd Frills, the Cy Tim Bruggenkates, the Ray Comforts. It's like, there's no way a guy with brain damage like myself can look at this and be like, I smell a rat. Whilst other people, millionaires, people with advanced degrees, aren't having the same feelings that I'm having. I'm not that special. I refuse to believe that. Other people have to be feeling this too.
a lot of scientists who are creationists, their degree is in many times some form of engineering, which, I mean, you won't find too many evolutionary biologists, maybe a few here and there, but generally the scientists in creationism are in engineering, which, I mean, kind of, it stumps me because, I mean, they're the first ones to bring up the second law of thermodynamics, when an engineer, especially one that deals with any form of fluid theory, fluid flow, should know the flaw in that argument. Any engineers here should know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, as far as education, just the level of education itself, that really as a factor that should, determine whether or not they believe. Really, it's where your education is. I mean, I could have a PhD in, shoot, I could be a 7th degree black belt. Just because I have that much education in something doesn't mean it's at all relevant in something that would educate me on whether or not something is true.
Sure. But I mean,
I'm not a 7th degree
but how
black
do you
belt.
put those two together? Like Francis Collins, right? Isn't that who I'm thinking of?
I don't know.
Who's
Who are you
got a
thinking of?
PhD, but is also a Christian. How do those two things go into the same
Again,
bottle?
it doesn't matter if they have a PhD. Part of what matters is what that PhD is in.
And not even that, because
Right.
I asked PZ Myers recently. I was in a hangout, and PZ Myers joined, and I thought this is the perfect time for the question that I've been struggling with for a long time. Georgia Purdom has a PhD in molecular biology.
I know who you're talking about.
You don't know who she is?
No, I think I know who you're talking about.
Georgia Purdom is the right hand of Ken Ham.
Yeah, Creation Research, Institute of Creation Research, where she was?
No, AIG.
I'm thinking of somebody else. Okay, I'm thinking of somebody else.
Georgia Purdom is on Answers News every single time.
I don't know who I'm thinking of then.
She has a PhD in molecular biology, and I asked PZ Myers, how on earth is it possible for someone to get a PhD in molecular biology and not understanding the theory of evolution?
Yeah.
And he was very clear, because there is a way to skip certain courses to get to your PhD. If you skip the courses that involve evolution, you still can get your PhD in molecular biology. So basically, it's just sticking your fingers in your ears and closing your eyes and saying la 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 la, and you get by.
Well, that explains
That is willfully ignoring evidence.
To them, they're willfully ignoring deception.
Yes, I agree. But there is a way to get a PhD in molecular biology and knowing nothing about evolution.
That explains a lot. Because
Yeah.
I've listened to like Ben Carson talk, who is,
He's a neuroscientist.
by all accounts, a brilliant scientist. He, has separated conjoined twins, blah, 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 blah. And then I listened to Ben Carson talk about evolution.
Yeah.
And you're like, how does a surgeon, how does a medical doctor deny evolution? Because for as little that I know about actual medicine, it's an actual cornerstone of modern biology, which is a cornerstone of modern medicine. But yet here's a man who has separated conjoined twins who thinks evolution is a fraud. So I guess there are classes that you can skip or ignore, I guess, but that's extraordinary to me.
Yep. And there's also Jason Lyle, if you're familiar with him.
I am not. Who's that?
He's a scientist who is or was with AIG.
He still, he is
He
with
still is, I
AIG,
think.
and he has his own ministry. I recently found out.
I wasn't sure if he was still with AIG or not.
But the best example is Todd Wood. Have you ever heard
Don't know Todd.
Todd Wood was in Is Genesis History, the movie.
Oh my God.
He is a biologist, I think, of some stripe. He actually has a blog, and in that blog he writes out very clearly that evolution is not a theory in distress, that there's no evidence against evolution. Evolution is 100% accurate and true, and is based on evidence, is based on facts. Evolution is happening. We have seen it happen. And then he concludes the blog that, knowing all of this, he has to reject it because it goes against his Bible.
Oh man.
Yep.
Are you serious?
I can link you to the blog because he wrote that, I think, in 2009, and it's still up. And I've mirrored,
but I'll watch it.
I've mirrored it because I want to mirror that particular part of his blog on my website that I'm still working on.
And that was the final straw. That argument, the Bible goes that hard against truth. It can't be true.
Every single one of them has a statement of faith, and that says that any evidence that goes against the Bible will be rejected automatically.
So then they're just being dishonest.
It's Answers in Genesis has this statement. Kent Hovind has this statement on his website. I think Eric Hovind has it on his website as well. Institute of Creation Research has it on their website. Every single apologist website has a statement of faith that includes that they reject any evidence that goes against the Bible. For Answers in Genesis, you actually have to sign a document where you state that that's what you agree with. And otherwise, you cannot work for Answers in Genesis.
That's pretty standard.
To be dishonest.
Pretty much. But okay. It's not how they see it.
So then what the hell is it?
Well,
I mean, if you have a foundation that says,
yes,
our truth is going to be this holy book, and anything that's science, which is our best effort at finding the truth, we're going to deny what science tells us. But this book that talks about pregnant virgins and sticks talking or snakes talking, that's going to be our foundation of truth. How is that? Go ahead.
They actually think that this is true, though. So they don't see.
But that's what kills me. I'm not.
They have a perfectly good reason for this.
What is it? Because I never found that reason when I was a Christian.
Well, the God who can create everything you see, who can create the universe in 6 days, that God, there's no human who can create this. Therefore, everything we puny humans find out isn't on the same level as what God knows. So if there's any dispute, then God automatically wins, because you can do science, but you can't create a universe, right?
Yeah, but okay, you and I ran against this, and because Heather said this last week, and you and I both kind of held her feet to the fire on this one, because she kept asserting God, and we both kept saying, "How do you know?" And that was the lingering doubt that I had from age 1 to 39, because I said everything that Heather said. I said you can't have knowledge without God. I said you can't have science without God. I said you can't have morality without. I said all that crap. But my lingering doubt was still, how the hell do I know this? And when the Hindu goes and says it's Brahma, they're just as justified as I am. So it's like, okay, if I'm figuring this out and I'm making C's, right? I was nobody's Rhodes Scholar. If I'm figuring this out, how is that other people aren't saying the same thing I'm saying or thinking? That just, it blows my mind to this day.
Well, my first question would be, if you can't know anything without God, what was it that made you know about God?
I'm sorry,
Because
say
that's,
that again?
What made me out to
if you can't know any,
know God?
if you can't know anything without God, then what did you use to get to know God? And was that trustworthy? Because
Well, you
at some point in your life, um, there has to be the first time someone mentions God to you, a completely new concept. What did you use to accept that concept? If you didn't have God before that, then
well, I mean,
what did you use?
you
You'll
use
you
the
will either rebel or you won't.
But that's not an answer to the question that I asked.
so the question is,
It's
what did
not.
you use to decipher whether
I-
God was real, right?
yes, if you don't have God, and you can't know anything without God, then what did you ever use to know God?
Well,
I still don't
if
understand
I
the
could put
question.
my Christian, if I could put my
You
Christian
don't.
hat back on, I would probably quote like Romans 20, right? I mean, isn't that the one that says the
Or
knowledge of God
Romans
is put
8.
in every man?
Yeah, but
That you
Just go with
just,
Romans 8 or Romans 9. Just go with Romans 9.
yeah, just, I mean, just pick Romans, right? To where
Well,
we
different
are,
parts of Romans talk about different things. I think it's Romans 9 that starts getting into some of the predestination stuff.
yeah, but we are just hardwired to know that the Christian God exists.
Yeah, but my question is, if you go to Romans, what are you using to define whether or not that's true?
God.
No, you don't
You're
know God.
using,
You don't know God yet.
no,
You're going.
but I think the argument would be you
If you
already
don't
know
accept
God.
it as right, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's,
if you deny it, then that's because you are actively denying it and you're in rebellion.
yeah.
Your sinful spirit is in rebellion.
Yeah, but
I was taught,
you still don't get the question.
no, I think the
I know.
question is,
If
what are we using?
if you are without God,
Right?
you can't know anything. You can't
Oh,
determine anything. You can't determine what's true and what's not true. So how do you determine that God is true?
I
if
think
I'm,
that would
yeah,
be a caveat. They'd probably put that caveat in there. Um, that, you know, that truth
well,
is always available.
I think that's kind of the Seichen Bruggenkate uh, card
Debunk.
that he likes to play, in that you do know things. That's what shows that God is actually real. That's why Romans 9, Romans 8, that's why Romans 20 is valid. You do know things. You can decipher truth because it's taught to you in Romans that you know these things. That's kind of the Christian answer. You do know things. That's what demonstrates God to be real.
Okay, so by that logic, an atheist knows as much as a theist does, because if it's imprinted on you, you have a way of getting to knowledge.
Yes, and I think the Christian argument would be there's no such thing as an atheist.
It would still debunk at least presuppositionalism.
I think in their mind it validates presuppositionalism, that the fact that we do know things, the fact that we do have knowledge proves that there is a God. I mean, it's I think it's horse crap myself, but if I could speak for people who want to rely on Romans, that's what they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's no different than saying I have flatulence. You can't know anything without flatulence. Therefore, right, my flatulence is the foundation of all knowledge. It's total horse crap. But I think they will rely on the Romans verses to validate their claim.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to solve this. We do have a theist, I think, in the chat. One popped up and asked a question.
I'm not sure if they're theists or not.
I'm not sure,
Seems
but
so.
and Andy McCaskill, please acknowledge in the chat if you're a theist or not a theist. He asked the question.
Oh, I'm looking at somebody else.
He asked the question. I proposed some logic, and he said, "Peter, by that logic, did you choose to be born?"
What?
I can have a quick answer to that. Apparently,
No.
I did.
Oh.
Because I was born on May the 1st. But I was supposed to be born on July the 1st. June the 1st, sorry.
I was going to say, that's
yes.
it's fairly
So
premium.
yes, after being in some place for 8 months, I decided, well, this is enough. I'm getting out. So apparently, yes, I decided to be born.
I'm wondering which logic he's pointing to, because
I don't have a clue, but I thought because I had a funny answer to it, I'd take the question.
I don't follow the question. I don't see how that's relevant to what we're talking.
And I can even prove it, because I was born on May 1st, and we have at that time we had a queen who had her birthday on April, the last day of April.
You can prove what?
Yes. Hold on. I'm not done yet. We had a queen who had a birthday the last day of April, so April 30th. Right? So in Holland, everywhere there are huge fireworks displays. At least in 1962, when I was born, we had huge fireworks displays because the queen had her birthday. And so there was a lot of noise going on. And
Peter, you have a friend in chat.
And I decided that I want to see the fireworks. So I decided to get born right there and then, because I wanted to see the fireworks. And we have a friend.
We have a friend in chat.
Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the party. A little bit late because we're about to wrap it up. I think we've done.
Our Stephanie.
Close. Our Stephanie, Christian apologist.
What does she have to say?
She just started listening and wants to know if this is Charis. Yes, this is Charis. Charis, Robert, and Peter. All your enemies in one
Hello,
chat.
Stephanie.
All your enemies in one chat, Stephanie.
Hello, Peter.
I wouldn't even call Stephanie an enemy. I I
I'm
You won't
joking. I'm
even call
joking.
Stephanie an
yeah,
enemy. That's
I,
generous.
I don't
I
agree with
have
Oh,
I
Stephanie.
I have said it to her in private, and I will say this in public as well. I'm happy Stephanie and I am talking.
Oh, sure.
We we have been uh, fighting. I think Stephanie is one of the people I fought with most, and it got tough at some point. And I'm happy that at least now we're talking, because Stephanie in her bio on Twitter says she wants to leave the world a better place than
Yes.
when she came into it.
Yes.
Um, I have the same thing.
So do I.
The only thing that we differ on is what's a better world. And but I still think that if people like her and me can can think so different and still have a decent conversation, then at least we have made the world a little bit better.
Sure. And that's
It won't be perfect, but it's a little bit better.
and I think the saving grace between the two sides is what they say versus what they do. I think for the most part is different. In that I'm glad they cherry pick the Bible. I really, 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 really am. I'm glad they don't kill homosexuals. I'm glad they don't stone unruly children. I'm glad they don't force rape victims to marry the man that raped them. That I'm happy for. For the most part, when we say we want to leave the world a better place, I think we can kind of all agree on what a better place is. Because, right, I don't want bad stuff happening to me. I don't want happening to y'all. So that kind of informs what quote unquote better place is. And I think Christians in practice versus Christians in theory are two different animals. So I'm kind of glad for the hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'm glad that the biggest part of the Christians are cherry picking the Bible and picking the verses that an atheist would pick.
Oh, sure. I mean, and that's what my friend Simon kind of busted me on when he said, you know, what's the one unique good that's unique to Christianity? And I couldn't name a single one. I think for the most part, we are all humanists,
Yeah,
where we've almost evolved to be that way, right? I don't burn down my neighbor's house because I don't want them to burn down my house. It's just kind of logic 101. I
yeah,
teach women's self-defense because I don't want to get my ass kicked. It's just you can imagine bad stuff happening to us and we don't want that. So we all kind of collectively work against it.
yeah.
I think we're all kind of humanists whether we realize it or not, just like they think we're all Christians whether we realize it or not. I just believe we're right.
spoiler alert, they don't actually think we're Christians.
Hit me. Do they don't think we're Christians or don't think we're believers?
I think there's a difference.
I agree. So they think that we're all believers. We just don't want to accept.
It
Because
also depends on the person, because some will believe
good
that,
point.
some won't. Um, I mean, they don't all fit into a cookie cutter any more than we do.
True, true. But they all, again, and pick which Romans verse. I'm leaning on 20 right now. But
That's a
don't they?
chapter, not a verse.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Chapter 20, where we all believe. It's right. It's all been imprinted on our hearts, right?
Mm.
So they all think we believe. It's just a matter of whether we acknowledge
Or admit,
or admit,
submit.
submit, which is a horrible word. I mean, there's a whole bunch that even when I was practicing, I just didn't really understand. It just, submit was a big one. Submit was a big one. I mean, any relationship that requires you to submit is an abusive relationship. If I'm dating Susie Q and I need Susie Q to submit to my authority, that's an abusive relationship. If my father needs me to submit, he's an abusive father, right? A good functional relationship is an actual back and forth. It doesn't necessarily mean equal, but there's a back and forth. But if someone has to submit in order to be in this relationship, you have Ike and Tina Turner. It's not healthy. It's just not.
Yeah. So Stephanie's now arguing in the chat that we're all hardwired for God, and I just let her know that then something happened with my wiring, because I never had the urge to look for a God. I never had the idea that there must be something bigger that made everything. I was just a fool sitting in school and learning about how everything came into being, and thought that that was actually a very logical explanation.
Well,
And
great.
I learned about biology, and that
Yeah.
was
Hey, we're
perfectly
talking to
acceptable.
Robert right now, though.
Yeah, okay, but I know, but my wiring seems to be off a little.
That's fine.
Well, how about if Stephanie is listening, I
Yes?
give her the exact same parameters as I gave the last time. I have to go to a birthday party later on tonight. If God is real and if there's a hardwiring for God, have God show up at that birthday party. It's an 80s themed birthday party. How about if God comes as Madonna from the 80s and taps you on my shoulder and say, by the way, my name is God? Stephan, if you are listening, on Monday, I'll admit I now believe in God. If it's a matter of hardwiring, and if I need some evidence, again, I'm going to an 80s themed birthday party tonight. Have someone who's dressed up as Madonna from the Like a Virgin video, have that person tap me on the shoulder and say, I am God.
Well, now I have to jump in, because now I think, Robert, you just want someone to turn up like Madonna in.
Oh my God.
All right, fine.
Well,
Michael Jackson from Beat It. How about that?
Yeah.
I'll see if me and Molly can do some Madonna impressions.
It's one more way for them to peel back another layer, right? It's one of those, well, did you believe in God? Well, yes, I did believe in God. Oh, well, see, there was your problem. You had to really believe in God. Well, I actually really did believe in God. Oh, that's the problem. You had to really, really believe in God. And so they can continue to peel back a layer. It shouldn't be this damn difficult. If you want to know if my mother is still alive, I can actually show you that my mom is still alive. We can call her, we can text her. If you're just being an absolute skeptic, we can go to a hospital and take a DNA test. But when you give this God of yours these anthropomorphic properties, him, he, you shouldn't have to go through all these hoops to prove that this God actually exists. Right?
Yep.
I mean, you just have to really believe. Like, well, that's horse crap.
Hey, Robert, you know what's happening here, don't you?
Try me. Am I just closed off to God? Is my heart not open?
You're I think somebody is kind of taking over the show without even being on the show, so let's not let that happen.
Oh no. What, Stephanie?
anybody who would have this effect.
Oh, well.
Well, I think we need to wrap it up because
Okay.
we've gone on for, I think, good 2 hours now,
And it was fantastic. I loved it. I loved it.
Awesome.
yeah, people have told me that we should shorten our shows, so
Okay.
I'm trying to teach myself not to go on too long.
I may or may not
Because-
have something to do with that.
Yeah,
Well,
because
I enjoyed it.
the show before this one went on for 3.5 hours just on Kalam cosmological argument. So
Oh my
Oh
God.
God!
Oh, not Kalam. Not Kalam.
Yes. Okay, so I want to thank
That's only been
everyone in.
debunked 1,000 times.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone in the chat for showing up and listen to this live. I want to thank again our moderator, Beach Price, who's always here when we have a talk. So thanks a lot for you. She's lucky. She doesn't have to moderate anything in the chat. We don't have people trolling our chat, so that's
Usually,
a good thing.
on occasion, but usually it's just very light.
Yeah, but not to the point where they have to be thrown out.
Right.
I mean, we're lucky to have that.
Sorry.
Hey.
They heard the neighbor's dogs. They heard the neighbor's dogs.
No, they heard we had no trolls, and they thought, well, let's troll in real time. And now
I enjoyed it.
And now tell me that
Truly.
dogs aren't conscious. I mean,
Oh, my dogs are very, very, very conscious. I have 2 terriers that run this house. I just live here. This is a fact.
I have never heard a Christian say that dogs are not conscious, just for the record. I have heard them say that they don't actually have eternal souls, but that's different than being conscious.
I've heard
this
both.
week.
Oh, really? Okay.
This week, I was told that dogs aren't conscious. So I want to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks Robert for coming on.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you.
It was a great talk. So stick around a little bit. We'll have a quick chat afterwards. We'll see what we have. 2 shows tomorrow. So if you are bored, we have 2 theists coming in tomorrow. And should you want to see a real miracle, I'm going to perform one live tomorrow. So
What?
feel free to join.
I'll look it up.
What?
Okay. I'll explain later. I'm going to perform a miracle tomorrow.
Okay.
See you all later, and thanks for coming. Bye, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.